Alrighty, gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Happy birthday to you.
Hello. Welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander, and each week we explore what's working and what's not in our friendships, community, and connections. Have you ever wished you could sit down and have a conversation about what is really going on in your friendships? Well, you found your people. Join us as we dive into real-life stories and explore new ways to approach these connections. Together, we're reimagining the rules of friendship. I think it's a pretty universal experience to have met someone at some point in your life where you walked away from that conversation thinking, wow, they are just magnetic. There's something about them, the way the energy shifts when they walk into a room, the way that people are drawn to them, the fact that you walk away from a conversation thinking, wow, I could talk to them all night. And it seems like the other people in the room feel the same way. Now, some might say that these magnetic people, it's just who they are. It's just their character or their aura. Or maybe they have some gene that the rest of us just don't seem to have. And to some extent, some of that might be right. We'll see if you still feel that way by the end of the episode. Like if there is some sort of study out there about what's going on with these magnetic people, send it my way. But I have a theory about people who are magnetic. I believe that magnetic people are just people who are out there doing the thing. They are taking action consistently. And when they do that, it creates momentum. And so what we're drawn to is the fact that it seems like they're riding a wave and we want to jump on because we think to ourselves, wow, that looks fun. That looks great that someone else has started the movement and I can just join it. But here's the thing. I think that what they're doing is something we can all do. That they're just over here taking small actions consistently instead of living in their brains all the time, overanalyzing, weighing every pro and con, calculating the risks, weighing themselves with negative self-talk. I think that because these people are taking action, we are drawn to them because we're like, yeah, I want in on that. So today, in this episode, I want to talk about how you can create your own friendship momentum, your own wave, so that you don't have to wait for anybody else to create that momentum for you. Instead, you can really embody this main character energy in your friendships. You can create this for yourself. And I think that it is important to be able to create it for yourself. Because if you're dependent on someone else's momentum for your own happiness, what happens if no one else is around to get things started? And when you're stuck riding everyone else's waves, it can be easy to lose sight of your own wants, needs, and interests. Like, sure, the ride is fun, but maybe it doesn't exactly feel like it's hitting the mark for you. It's not what you want to be doing or talking about, or it doesn't quite feel like the support you need. And that's because you are on someone else's wave. So today we're creating main character energy, and I'm calling it that because when I started thinking about this idea of a main character, when I thought about what a main character is in our favorite books and movies and stories, I realized that a main character is someone who faces challenges and obstacles, but often overcomes them. Because they have this sense of trust in themselves. They have this idea that they can figure it out when something hard presents itself. And not only that, most main characters have this group of allies that help them along their journey. So when I'm talking about main character energy in our friendships, my hope for you is that when you have to face challenges and obstacles, whether those are big life moments that just like tear everything apart or change everything. Or maybe they're just little bumps in the road, like a hard conversation or an awkward interaction, feeling like you completely fumbled a situation as a friend. I want you to have this trust that you can figure it out and overcome that problem, whatever comes your way. And if you can't, it's okay because you have built yourself a group of allies that will help you along your journey, that will hop on that wave, give it a little more energy and momentum, and help you get through this season of life. Here's what main character energy in your friendships is and is not. Main character energy is taking action, speaking up for yourself, taking risks, prioritizing community, connection, friendship in your life as vital and important, seeing this as a piece of your self-care. Main character energy in your friendships is not making everything about you, lacking empathy towards others, centering yourself in every relationship, blaming other people as the problem, never taking responsibility, or taking more than you give. That is not the main character energy we're talking about. We're not talking about hyper independence and making everything about you. Instead, we are talking about leaning in and creating this wave of momentum, not only for yourself, but when you do this, you become an inspiration and a resource for all those allies and those people around you who maybe need a little help creating the momentum for themselves. So today, I have 3 tips for embodying main character energy in your friendships. Number 1, you're going to start to peel back the layers of your authentic self, which really just means you're going to actively work to let yourself be seen. Now, this is magnetic because we are all drawn to people who are unique. Because when you talk about something that is maybe, let's say, the nichest of interest, it's so random, so small, but you're in this room with these other people having this conversation, there is going to be someone else in that conversation that is inspired by you because they have been too scared to tell anyone else about their super niche interest. You're magnetic because you are inspiring others. And not only that, you're also magnetic because you're now memorable. And I think that most of us convince ourselves that in order to be memorable or inspiring, it has to be because of some big thing, when in reality, it's often the little things. I actually have a great example of this. I have a friend, and I don't know if I've talked about this before on the podcast, but when she travels, she collects those Starbucks mugs from the different cities and states and countries and theme parks and whatever. And last week, we were out with some friends and Michael's uncle. So there were 2 new people in this conversation that have never heard about how she collects Starbucks mugs before. And she is sitting there super passionately telling us about how she just did an inventory again. She has 158 mugs. You know, how many has she ever collected on one trip? How does she get them home? What does she do with them? Answer, she displays them in her house. They do use them too. She has all these stories of the places she's been with various people where they've had to go to like 2 to 3 Starbucks on that trip to find a mug. And it's just this like super tiny niche random thing, but she talks about it with so much passion that it makes her so memorable. And I've heard her talk about this dozens of times now. Because of this story, I can't tell you the number of times that other people have sat around the table and have admitted that maybe they collect something or they're really passionate about some obscure topic. She's inspired so many people to open up. And I think so many of us get caught in this cycle where we share the same things about ourselves. You kind of have your script. You're like, oh, I'm comfortable talking about this and that. And this is like a big fact about me or an interesting fact about me. There are all these little things about ourselves that we've convinced ourselves are insignificant and nobody is interested in them. Nobody would care. But those are the things that make us colorful and interesting. And when we share them, it gives permission for other people to share them too. So maybe you start talking about how you want to open an Etsy shop that sells hand-drawn dog portraits. And now somebody in the conversation is like, okay. I mean, I really haven't told anybody this, but I've been wanting to start an Instagram that shares my absolute obsession with show tunes. And I want to break down all the lyrics. And maybe more dominoes fall and more people around the table are willing to share some random interest that they have been feeling weird about, but everybody will remember them for. Now, remember earlier in this episode when I said that sometimes when we depend on someone else for the momentum and we're just jumping onto their wave, we can lose sight of our own wants, needs, and interests. I actually had a personal realization recently about this. I realized that I kind of have my script. I have those things that I share. I mentioned this. So the people in my life know these like kind of random details about me. But because I don't offer up more, I don't get a little deeper, I brush off their questions sometimes because I don't want to talk about me. I've kind of fallen into this pattern where I think a lot of the times I end up on other people's waves. Now, I think being 100% in your main character energy all the time is really hard. But for me, I'm realizing that I need to be a little more active about being seen, opening up, sharing, letting these little insignificant things come out, because that's going to give me or more color to me for the people that I care about. Because people want to know you, right? You want to know about me. I'd love to know about you. Also, like, don't you want to know you? That main character version that shares the little things about themselves? Because I would bet you want to know that about your friends. So it's safe to assume they want to know that about you. And can we just talk for a second about how if we did this more, like, wouldn't small talk just be so much more interesting? If you walked away from that small talk conversation being like, wow, I never knew that there were even 158 mugs to collect, and that's not all of them. Or I can't believe that somebody did that. Somebody started a Show Tunes Instagram account. Or something actually I can think of a personal example. We've talked about how I'm not outdoorsy on here. The idea of climbing a mountain sounds like my nightmare. But when somebody tells me that they've gone out there and scaled Mount Rainier, I'm like, whoa, I am so inspired. And not in that I want to go do that way. Absolutely not. I'm inspired because I'm like, wow, that is so unique that this person loves scaling mountains enough to go climb for days and put themselves at risk. Like, I'm fascinated by that. That's the main character energy. So here's how you're going to step into your main character energy here. And I'm going to do this too. I just said I needed to do this. We're all going to speak up a little bit more. We're going to tell people about our interests. We're not going to brush off their questions. We're going to share the little things that seem silly and insignificant and niche. And you know what? Maybe we're even going to take it a step further and we're going to invite them along. This is like my friend when we go travel being like, come with me to find the mug. Like, we laugh about it. And we're not laughing at her. We're just like, this is so silly that we do this, but it's like something she loves. It's something we know about her, and she's inviting us in on the experience. And you know what? If nobody joins, that's okay. Because I want to remind you that they still know these things about you, right? I still could go to a party and hear somebody talk about how they collect Starbucks mugs, and I could be like, hold on, so does my friend. How many do you have? Because she has color. She has let me in. That is main character energy. I mean, I'm literally talking about her at a party. Like, she's the main character. Hi, Kay, love you. So I need you to trust that the small details about yourself are interesting and memorable and inspiring. Tip number 2, I need you to take a risk, right? Main characters aren't just sitting at home, reading a book. They're not hiding away. Main characters are out there doing things that we want to do. That's why it's magnetic. Because when somebody watches you take a risk, a lot of them are saying to themselves like, wow, I wish I had the courage to do that. But I think so many of us get in our own heads. We're convinced that we don't want to be seen failing. And like, I have an example for this. Let's say you wanted to host a get together for some people. You want to invite 20 people over, but you're scared that no one's going to show up. So instead, you talk yourself down and you don't invite anybody because you don't want to be seen as failing or this person that nobody wants to show up. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have sent many an invite where no one has showed up, but I keep doing it, right? That's the main character energy. And I could tell myself that they all see me as a failure or they all think I don't have friends or whatever other things I could tell myself. When in reality, what I actually, if I step back and remove myself from the situation, what I think my friends are saying is like, yeah, I want to get together with everybody more often. I'm so grateful that Alex sent that invite because now I'm realizing that I miss seeing everybody together. I hope that this works out next time. Maybe we should all try to do that. I'm going to prioritize one of these invites. Maybe I should host one of these. That's likely what my friends are saying. Like, if we totally change the scenario, because sometimes I think if we look at this in a non-friendship lens, we realize how silly we're being, right? Let's say that somebody has a goal to bike across the US and they get injured with 75 miles to go. Like, so injured, they can't keep going. If somebody's telling you that story, you're not saying, oh, well, they didn't make it. You're saying, wow, I can't believe they biked for 400,000 days. I am so inspired that they tried to bike across the US. And that's a bummer that they didn't make it the last 75 miles. But what they did is incredible. And if you're sitting in there saying like, well, Alex, sending an invite to have people come over isn't the same thing as biking across the US. Well, you know what? It might as well be. It might as well be for as terrified as most people are to send the invite. And we could tell ourselves that these big, grand things are harder, but sometimes actually the littlest things are the hardest things to do. So take the initiative, start the group chat, make the invite for the group trip that everybody's been talking about for 5 years. Invite those friends of friends together that you've mentioned connecting, but never quite get up the courage to. Try something new with a friend. Like trying something new with a friend, even with an established friend, this is still the same energy here. I want you to imagine that you want to try pickleball, but you know you'll probably be terrible. So you tell your friend like, hey, I really want to try this. I'm going to be terrible, but do you want to go play pickleball? And you know what you just did there? You created space for your friend to be a beginner. You created momentum where like, it's okay to try and fail. It's okay if both of you miss every shot and then you never want to do this again. It's okay if you go and you only hit the ball 4% of the time, but you're absolutely obsessed and you want to keep going back. Like you have given yourself and your friend this opportunity, this momentum to try something, even though you don't have to be perfect. So this is all to say when you're out there thinking about taking a risk and your brain is trying to convince you not to do it, that it may not play out the way you hope it does. I hope that you take a step back and remember that no matter what, the action of taking the risk is inspiring and that it is momentum and that it provides courage for not only you, but your friends to keep trying. So in order to step into your main character energy here, you got to take action. You got to do the thing. Stop overthinking it. Just make the invite. Ask for the invite. Start the group chat. Bring people together. Try something new. And follow through. Don't tiptoe into this. That's not main character energy to just like start the group chat, send one message and then never respond. Main character energy would be sending a message for, I don't know, a couple times a week for a few weeks to see if you can get this up and running. And if it completely flops, that's okay. Let it go. You never know how that's going to ripple out for other people. And again, you tried. You were committed. You took the risk and you inspired other people. And that's what's magnetic. Now, my third and final tip is to let yourself be the center of your connection universe. This is magnetic because when people see that you're taking care of yourself and prioritizing yourself, they are inspired to do the same. I think that the lie we tell ourselves is that, well, someday I'll make those friends. Someday I'll put myself out there. Like, you know, when somebody has a breakup and then you're waiting for the glow up? Because what is the glow up? It's really just this moment when somebody is putting themselves first again. And we're inspired because they're like, wow, look at what they are doing. They are living their fullest life. So I guess what I'm telling you here is to do that without waiting for a breakup or a major life upset. I spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about building connections that support the various areas of your life, making parent friends or couple friends or family friends, people who support you at work. And while I do think that that is incredibly important to have well-rounded connections, that's some main character energy here is to build yourself a support system that supports the various parts of you. In this episode specifically, I want to call out that a lot of people miss one type of connection when they are trying to build that bigger support system. And that is connections that support you. You are one of the many buckets that you need to build connections in, not the roles that you are in your life, right? You're building connections as a partner, as a parent, as a adult child, as a whatever your job title is. You need to also build connections that support you. That's part of that glow up energy, prioritizing yourself, not just the roles you play in this world. And I'm not saying you need to put 100% of your energy into connections that support you. It could be that you just leave yourself 5 or 10% to build connections that support you as a person, your joy, your fun, your interests, you without your titles. So how do you know whether you're doing this or not? I want to give you some examples of the ways that I see people kind of all consuming, building connections that support their titles and kind of forgetting about themselves until some big life change happens. And then it's very apparent they have not built any connections for themselves. An example of this would be entering into a new romantic relationship. And that scenario we've heard time and time again, where suddenly this person has no time for their previous friends. All of their energy is either focused on that romantic partnership or making friends that you can spend time with your partner with, like couple friends. That's their whole focus. It's like all previous friendships were forgotten. And you are just focused on not only your romantic partner, but connections where you and your romantic partner can go and spend time with that person. And then what happens? We get a breakup, we get a divorce, and it becomes very apparent that this person hasn't built any connections just for themselves, because it's like kind of awkward to hang out with all your couple friends when you're now divorced. I'm not saying you can't do that, but like it's not very comfortable. No matter what, it's not very comfortable. But if you have built connections, even within those couple friends that are like a dynamic where it's you and one other person hanging out on your own, it's going to be easier to transition in that friendship when it's just you. Another one would be people who build kind of connections for their family, like family friends. I see this a lot, where all focus on building connections are on connections that will suit the entire family union, where you can go on trips together or travel for sports leagues together. And that's all great. I think you need those people. That supports a huge part of your life. But if you haven't spent any time building connections for yourself, what I see quite often is people who come to me when they are either preparing to be empty nesters or newly empty nesters, and they realize that they really don't have any friendships that don't center around family activities. And they're really unsure what to do with themselves because every friendship they had kind of revolved around everybody else. And a third example would be if you're somebody who's out there really, really focused on your career and all of your connections are work related, they're all work friends or networking connections or industry peers. And then let's say you hit absolute burnout and you don't have people that you can talk to about things outside of work. And you really haven't built connections for a more holistic you. So instead of telling yourself, oh, someday, we all need to let ourselves be the center of our connection universe sometimes. We need to prioritize ourselves because the main character energy here is twofold, right? One, we are truly building ourselves a support system. We are building those allies that will help us through, that will jump on our wave when bad things happen in our life or good things and add to the momentum. But the second thing is that people are inspired by the fact that you are prioritizing you, not you with all your other roles, but you, and that you're doing the work for that. Because if you think about it, so many of us are out here doing the work for everyone else, right? Friendships require labor, and women especially, men and women, but like women especially, I'm talking to you. How often are all of us doing the emotional labor for everybody else when it comes to connections? This would look like telling your partner, like, hey, I feel like you're really depressed and you need to get out of the house more. And then you're doing the work to help them find places to go and build connection. And you're encouraging them. And you're maybe watching the kids and you're creating time and space. You're scheduling it into the calendar. Another example would be, you want your kids to have friends. So you're out here working really hard to set up play dates and befriending your kids' friends' parents, getting them to all the activities, dealing with the logistics. Or maybe you're looking at your parents and you're saying, I think you'd be a lot happier if you weren't so lonely, right? And you're trying to brainstorm volunteer activities, community events, people they could connect with. This is all a lot of work. And I think a lot of people, again, end up focused on everybody else instead of taking some of the time, I'm not saying all, some of the time to make yourself the center of your connection universe, using some of this energy to build connections just for yourself. Because when you do that, you have a stronger support system, you are prioritizing yourself, which is inspiring to people, and you're honestly probably just a happier, healthier person, right? You're giving yourself the glow up without having to wait for some life-altering change to happen. Now, to close out this episode, I have 2 small challenges for you. The first one has to do with getting out of your head. I saw something funny to me the other day on social media. I was scrolling around, right? And my algorithm is very trained to send me friendship, community content. So it sent me this post and somebody was talking about the 7 types of rest. So I'm scrolling through like, oh, okay. Social rest was on there. And every single bullet point had to do with reflection. And I just sat there reading it, thinking to myself, is it really restful to just let your brain spin on your social life? Just like spin and spin and spin. Isn't that like anxiety? That's not rest. Do I think people need reflection? Yes. And in fact, when I started doing this work, I thought people needed way more reflection. We need some, but I think way more than reflection, most people just need to take some action. We are far past the sweet spot of the reflection needed. And we are just the people that are standing there in the corner, watching someone with main character energy, wishing we can be them, but we are so in our heads. Being that in our heads is not rest. So that's my first challenge for you, is just to spend some time this week reflecting on how much you're in your own head about all of this. Are you overanalyzing? Are you just spending all your time thinking about doing the thing, but never actually doing it? Because taking action, that's what's going to change your friendships, your social wellness, and in the end, you and your life. This is kind of like, I will be the first to say, I am guilty of this. Sometimes when I scroll through social media, I will see, I guess, trainers probably are who they are, like fitness trainers, right? And they're talking about some exercise, here's a 15-minute exercise, here's an exercise for your shoulders and neck pain, whatever. And I can't tell you the number of saves I have of exercises that I could do, of protocols and plans and sequencing and tips and tricks. I honestly don't want to tell you. If I pulled up this folder with all these saves, it would be sad. Honestly, I should probably do it because it might spur me into action now that I'm talking about it. I can reflect on these things all day. I can imagine the sequencing. I can think of the areas I need to work on, the places where I could feel stronger. I can think about it all day. And I can wait for the perfect protocol and the perfect this and the perfect that. Or I could just get up in my pajamas every day, get down on the floor, do a few exercises, very messy, imperfectly, and I would get more results than what I'm currently doing. I need to get out of my own head. My second challenge to you is to take some darn action. Main character energy isn't something you think about. It's something that you embody, something you do, right? That's what we talked about in the very beginning of this. In our friendships, we are not talking enough about action. So right now, pick an action and just go do it. Talk to somebody new, invite somebody somewhere, send the message, make the invite. Small thing, just do something. Because when I look at these people that are embodying main character energy, the people that are creating momentum, they're not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect action. Like we're out there talking about how somebody is magnetic because that's just who they are. There's something about them. And I think the thing about them is they have just gotten so used to putting themselves out there in these small, imperfect ways and taking small actions. It's second nature. And that's why we're drawn to them. But any of us can do that. Any of us can start creating new patterns where we put ourselves out there and take these little actions, where we step into our main character energy, and we can create our own momentum and be the main character in our friendships. With that, I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle at it's Alex Alexander. Or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting. And use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.